Ladies and gentlemen, many believe that kindness is a virtue that should be practiced without hesitation. It is often said that those who are kind will be met with kindness in return, that good deeds will naturally be rewarded, and that people who treat others well will be respected. However, reality often tells a different story. The world does not always reward kindness, instead it tests it. It pushes against those who extend goodwill, probing for weakness, seeing how far they can be bent before they break. This is an unfortunate truth that many learn only after being taken advantage of, ignored, or even ridiculed for their generosity. When someone is consistently kind without boundaries, they risk being perceived as weak rather than virtuous. This is not because kindness itself is a flaw, but because human nature often equates leniency with inferiority. A person who never pushes back, never asserts themselves, and never demands respect is easy to overlook. They become an afterthought, a resource to be used rather than an individual to be valued. In contrast, those who are firm, those who set limits, and those who ensure that their kindness is given only where it is deserved, are the ones who command respect. The world operates on a system of power and balance. If someone gives without requiring anything in return, they create an imbalance. Others begin to expect their generosity rather than appreciate it. What was once seen as an act of goodwill becomes the standard, and soon their kindness is no longer viewed as a gift, but as an obligation. The more they give, the less it is valued. People do not respect what is easily obtained. Instead, they respect what is scarce, what is difficult to earn, and what comes with conditions. This is why those who are unguarded in their kindness often find themselves disrespected. A person who never says no, who always prioritizes the needs of others above their own, and who never demands anything in return, is not seen as noble, but as someone to be used. This is not necessarily done with malicious intent. It is simply human nature to take the path of least resistance. If a person knows they can receive kindness, assistance, or forgiveness without consequence, they will continue to take advantage of it, not out of cruelty, but because it is available without cost. A person who gives too much without setting boundaries often reaches a breaking point. They may begin to feel unappreciated, exhausted, or resentful, but by the time they realize what has happened, they have already established a pattern that is difficult to change. The people around them have become accustomed to their constant giving, their endless patience, and their unwillingness to demand anything in return. If they suddenly decide to enforce boundaries, they may be met with resistance, as others have already taken their kindness for granted. It is important to recognize that true kindness does not mean allowing oneself to be walked over. It does not mean giving endlessly without consideration for one's own well-being. True kindness is measured, intentional, and given with wisdom. It is not about saying yes to everything or always putting others first, but about knowing when to help, when to step back, and when to demand respect. A kind person who allows themselves to be mistreated is not practicing virtue. They are practicing self-neglect. In contrast, a person who is strong in their kindness, who offers it with discretion and ensures it is valued, earns both respect and appreciation. When kindness is given selectively, it becomes meaningful. It is seen as something valuable, something worth earning. People respect those who are generous but firm, who are willing to help but not at their own expense, and who extend goodwill but do not tolerate disrespect. One of the key principles of maintaining respect while being kind is knowing when to say no. Many people fear that setting boundaries will make them appear cold or unkind, but the opposite is true. A person who knows their limits and enforces them is seen as strong and self-assured. They are less likely to be taken for granted because their kindness is not seen as an endless resource. When they do offer help, it is appreciated because it is recognized as a choice, not an expectation. The world will always test those who are kind. It will push them to see if they are easily manipulated, if they can be taken advantage of, and if they will give without question. Those who allow themselves to be used will find that their kindness is not met with gratitude, but with expectation, and in many cases with outright disregard. Those who pair kindness with strength, however, will find that they are both respected and valued. Kindness is often seen as an unquestionable virtue, a trait that should be encouraged and practiced without restraint. People are taught from a young age that being kind will lead to positive outcomes, that treating others well will bring kindness in return, and that generosity and patience will earn respect. However, the reality of human nature is far more complex. Kindness, when given without strength, does not always invite gratitude or admiration. Instead, it often leads to disrespect, exploitation, and even contempt. In many cases, people mistake kindness for weakness. If someone is always accommodating, always willing to sacrifice their own needs for others, and never pushes back when mistreated, they become an easy target. The world is full of individuals who, whether intentionally or subconsciously, take advantage of those who do not assert themselves. A person who is kind but lacks the ability to enforce boundaries is seen as someone who can be used without consequence. Their goodwill is not seen as an admirable quality, but as a flaw to be exploited. There is a natural tendency for people to test the limits of those around them. If someone is always available, always willing to forgive, and never asserts their own worth, others begin to see them as less valuable. It is not necessarily out of cruelty, but out of human nature. People respect what is rare, what is difficult to earn, and what has value. If kindness is given without discernment, it loses its meaning. It becomes expected rather than appreciated, and the person offering it is no longer respected but merely tolerated. The issue arises when kindness is given in the absence of strength. Strength does not mean aggression or harshness. It means having the ability to set boundaries, to stand firm when necessary, and to ensure that kindness is not taken for granted. A person who is both kind and strong understands that generosity should be balanced with self-respect. They do not allow others to walk over them, and they do not give endlessly without consideration for their own well-being. When kindness lacks strength, it often leads to disappointment. Those who give freely, who never demand anything in return, and who refuse to assert themselves often find that they are not met with gratitude but with expectation. The more they give, the less they are appreciated. People begin to assume that their kindness is not a choice but an obligation. They stop recognizing it as a virtue and start seeing it as a trait to be used for their own benefit. This is why those who are overly kind without standing their ground often feel drained and unappreciated. They may wonder why their efforts go unnoticed, or why they are not respected despite their good intentions. The answer lies in the fact that kindness, when not paired with strength, does not command admiration. Instead, it signals to others that they can take without reciprocation, that they can push without resistance, and that there are no consequences for disrespect. In contrast, those who are kind yet firm earn a different kind of response. When a person is willing to help others but also willing to say no when necessary, they create a sense of value around their kindness. It is not something that can be demanded. It is something that must be earned. People respect those who offer their generosity selectively, who do not allow themselves to be used, and who ensure that their own well-being is not sacrificed in the process. This balance between kindness and strength is what defines true respect. A person who is only strong without kindness may be feared but not loved. A person who is only kind without strength may be liked but not respected. However, a person who combines both is admired. They are seen as fair, as wise, and as someone whose generosity holds true weight. Their kindness is not cheap, it is meaningful. Many people struggle with this concept because they fear that standing up for themselves will make them appear unkind. They worry that setting boundaries will make them seem selfish. However, the opposite is true. When a person respects themselves enough to enforce their limits, others take notice. They see that this is someone who values their time, their energy, and their own well-being. As a result, their kindness is valued more because it is understood to be intentional rather than compulsory. Those who fail to pair kindness with strength often find themselves in a cycle of disappointment. They continue to give, hoping for appreciation, only to be met with indifference or entitlement. They hope that their kindness will eventually be recognized, but instead they are taken for granted. This cycle only ends when they learn to assert themselves, to recognize their own worth, and to understand that kindness must be given with wisdom, not just with an open hand. The world does not simply reward kindness, it tests it. If someone is kind but lacks the ability to defend themselves, they will be met with increasing levels of disrespect. However, if they are kind and strong in equal measure, they will find that their kindness is not only valued, but also respected. The truly wise understand that kindness is not about pleasing everyone or constantly yielding to the demands of others. It is about choosing to act with compassion while maintaining a sense of self-respect. Kindness without firmness leads to exploitation, while firmness without kindness leads to alienation. The balance between these two qualities is what defines true wisdom. Those who master this balance navigate life with both grace and authority, earning the respect of those around them while remaining true to their values. Many people believe that kindness is about always being agreeable, always saying yes, and always putting others before themselves. This misconception leads to frustration, exhaustion, and a loss of personal identity. When a person gives without limits, they are not seen as generous but as someone who can be taken advantage of. Their kindness is no longer appreciated because it is expected. They become someone whose presence is convenient rather than valued. In contrast, the wise understand that kindness must be deliberate. It must be given in a way that maintains one's dignity, ensuring that it is never mistaken for weakness. The world does not always reward kindness, nor does it always respect those who are endlessly accommodating. People push boundaries to see how much they can take, not necessarily out of malice, but because it is in human nature to seek the path of least resistance. If someone never asserts themselves, never demands respect, and never sets limits, they will find that others start taking their kindness for granted. The wise prevent this by making it clear that while they are willing to help, they are not willing to be used. They know that generosity must come with conditions, that patience must have limits, and that forgiveness must be given wisely. This is where firmness becomes essential. Firmness does not mean being harsh, aggressive, or unkind. It means having the strength to say no when necessary. It means standing one's ground when values are challenged. It means making sure that kindness does not come at the cost of self-respect. Those who are wise do not allow others to manipulate their goodwill. They recognize when someone is taking more than they give, and are not afraid to enforce boundaries. They understand that if they do not respect themselves, no one else will. Firmness also ensures that kindness remains meaningful. If a person gives too freely, their generosity loses its impact. It becomes ordinary, something that others feel entitled to rather than grateful for. However, when kindness is given with intention, when it is balanced with strength, it is truly valued. A wise person does not feel the need to prove their goodness by sacrificing their own well-being. Instead, they choose when and how to extend kindness in a way that benefits both themselves and others. Many people struggle with the idea of being firm because they fear being disliked. They worry that if they say no, if they enforce their boundaries, or if they refuse to be endlessly accommodating, others will think less of them. However, the truth is that people respect those who respect themselves. Those who are too eager to please often find that they are neither truly appreciated nor truly respected. In contrast, those who set boundaries while remaining kind earn admiration. They are seen as strong, dependable, and worthy of trust. Their kindness is respected because it is given from a place of strength rather than obligation. Wisdom is not about avoiding conflict at all costs. It is about knowing which battles to fight and which to walk away from. A wise person does not waste their kindness on those who will never appreciate it, nor do they allow themselves to be drained by those who only take and never give. They recognize that their energy and time are valuable, and they invest them wisely. They do not feel guilty for prioritizing their own well-being, because they understand that only by taking care of themselves can they truly be of service to others. The balance between kindness and firmness allows a person to maintain their integrity. When someone is too kind without being firm, they lose their sense of self. When someone is too firm without being kind, they push others away. But when these two qualities are in harmony, a person is both respected and valued. They are able to navigate relationships with confidence, knowing that their kindness is not a weakness, but a strength, made even stronger by the boundaries that protect it. The truly wise do not allow themselves to be controlled by the opinions of others. They do not bend to every request, nor do they feel the need to justify their decisions. They offer kindness because they choose to, not because they are pressured into it. They understand that being firm is not an act of selfishness, but an act of self-respect. They know that true kindness is only meaningful when it is given freely, not when it is demanded or expected. And because of this, they earn both the respect and the trust of those around them. Unconditional kindness is often seen as the highest form of virtue, a selfless act that reflects the best of human nature. Many believe that by giving endlessly, by always putting others first, and by never expecting anything in return, they are doing what is morally right. However, the reality is that kindness without limits can lead to self-sabotage. When someone continuously prioritizes the needs of others over their own, they risk losing their own sense of identity, their personal well-being, and even the respect of those around them. One of the greatest dangers of unconditional kindness is that it creates an imbalance in relationships. Whether in friendships, family, or professional settings, when one person is always giving while the other is always receiving, a sense of entitlement begins to develop. Instead of being grateful, people start expecting kindness as a given. What once was appreciated becomes routine, and soon, the giver finds themselves in a situation where they are being taken advantage of. This is not necessarily because people are inherently ungrateful, but because human nature adapts to what is consistently provided without effort. When kindness is given unconditionally, it loses its value, and the person offering it often ends up feeling used and unappreciated. Another issue with boundless kindness is that it can lead to emotional and physical exhaustion. Constantly putting others first means neglecting one's own needs, desires, and even health. A person who never says no, who always tries to make others happy, and who continuously sacrifices their own well-being will eventually find themselves drained. Over time, this exhaustion turns into frustration, and frustration turns into resentment. The very kindness that was meant to bring connection and warmth instead leads to feelings of being unappreciated and undervalued. The giver may begin to wonder why their kindness is not reciprocated, but the answer lies in the fact that they never required anything in return. Furthermore, when kindness is unconditional, it removes the responsibility of others to be accountable for their own actions. If someone always forgives, always helps, and always accommodates, they inadvertently teach others that there are no consequences for selfish behavior. This can create a cycle in which people continue to take without ever learning to give. The kind person, believing they are doing good, actually enables bad behavior by never allowing others to experience the natural outcomes of their actions. True kindness does not mean shielding others from the lessons they need to learn. It means knowing when to help and when to step back.
Additionally, those who give unconditionally often find that their self-worth becomes tied to how much they do for others. They begin to believe that their value is measured by their ability to please, to assist, and to sacrifice. This can lead to a dangerous pattern where they ignore their own happiness in order to maintain the approval of those around them. Over time, they may lose their sense of identity, forgetting what they truly want because they have spent so much time catering to the desires of others. When a person's self-worth is dependent on external validation, they become vulnerable to manipulation, disappointment, and emotional instability. A critical consequence of unconditional kindness is that it weakens personal boundaries. People who are always willing to help, who never ask for anything in return, and who never say no often struggle to protect themselves from toxic relationships. They attract those who are looking to take advantage of their generosity, and because they do not set limits, they allow these individuals to stay in their lives far longer than they should. Boundaries are essential for maintaining self-respect, yet many fear that enforcing them will make them appear unkind. In reality, setting boundaries does not make a person less kind. It ensures that their kindness is given to those who truly appreciate it rather than those who exploit it. Kindness, when practiced wisely, is a beautiful and powerful trait. However, when it is given without restraint, without boundaries, and without self-respect, it can become a source of self-sabotage. Those who give endlessly often find themselves feeling empty, disrespected, and exhausted. They may wonder why their kindness is met with indifference rather than appreciation, but the answer lies in the way they have allowed themselves to be treated. True kindness is not about giving until nothing is left. It is about knowing when to give, how to give, and when to walk away. People often admire generosity, but they respect those who balance it with discipline. Being generous without limits can lead to exhaustion, exploitation, and a loss of self-worth. However, when generosity is paired with discipline, it becomes a source of strength rather than a weakness. A person who knows when to give and when to hold back commands respect because they demonstrate both kindness and self-respect. They are not easily manipulated, nor do they allow their generosity to be mistaken for obligation. When generosity is given without discipline, people begin to expect it rather than appreciate it. If someone is always available to help, always willing to sacrifice their own needs, and never asks for anything in return, others may take their kindness for granted. This does not necessarily happen out of malice, but because human nature tends to adapt to patterns. If a person gives freely without boundaries, those around them may assume it is their natural role and stop recognizing it as an act of kindness. Over time, the giver may feel drained, unappreciated, and even resentful. In contrast, a person who balances their generosity with discipline ensures that their kindness is both valued and respected. They are not afraid to say no when necessary, and they do not give out of guilt or social pressure. Their generosity is intentional, given in a way that does not compromise their well-being. Because they establish clear boundaries, others understand that their kindness is a choice, not an expectation. This not only earns them respect, but also makes their generosity more meaningful. Discipline in generosity also protects a person from being taken advantage of. Some individuals will take as much as they can without ever giving back, testing the limits of how much they can get away with. A disciplined giver recognizes this behavior and refuses to enable it. They are willing to help those who genuinely need and appreciate their support, but they do not allow themselves to be used. By maintaining this balance, they ensure that their generosity remains an act of strength rather than a sign of weakness. Furthermore, people respect those who demonstrate control over their resources, whether it be time, energy, or money. Someone who gives indiscriminately without considering their own limits may appear reckless rather than admirable. However, when generosity is paired with thoughtfulness and strategy, it is seen as a sign of wisdom. A disciplined giver knows when their help will make a real difference and when it will only encourage dependency. They give in a way that empowers others rather than making them reliant. This balance also extends to personal relationships. Those who give too much without setting boundaries often attract people who only take. This creates unhealthy dynamics where the giver's needs are constantly overlooked. However, when generosity is controlled and intentional, it fosters mutual respect. People who receive their kindness understand that it is not unlimited and are more likely to reciprocate in meaningful ways. Additionally, self-respect plays a crucial role in how generosity is perceived. A person who respects themselves will not allow their kindness to be exploited. They understand that their own well-being matters just as much as the well-being of others. Because of this, they do not tolerate disrespect or manipulation. Their generosity comes from a place of confidence, not insecurity, which makes it far more impactful. Others recognize this self-assurance and respond to it with admiration rather than entitlement. Ultimately, the most respected individuals are those who give with wisdom. They understand that generosity should be a conscious choice, not a compulsion. They help when they can, but they do not sacrifice their own stability for the sake of pleasing others. Their discipline allows them to give in a way that is both sustainable and meaningful, ensuring that their kindness is never mistaken for weakness. By balancing generosity with discipline, they earn not only appreciation but also lasting respect. Many people spend their lives trying to be liked, believing that approval from others is the key to happiness and success. They avoid conflict, agree even when they disagree, and sacrifice their own needs just to fit in. While being liked can feel rewarding in the short term, it does not guarantee respect. Respect is far more valuable because it is based on strength, integrity, and consistency. Unlike mere likability, which can be fleeting and superficial, respect is built on a foundation of character and principles. When a person prioritizes being liked, they often compromise their own values. They hesitate to speak their mind for fear of offending others. They tolerate mistreatment to avoid conflict. They become overly accommodating, thinking that endless kindness will earn them favor. However, people do not admire those who are always agreeable. They respect those who stand by their beliefs, even when it is unpopular. A person who constantly seeks approval may gain temporary acceptance, but they lose credibility in the process. Others may see them as pleasant, but not as someone to be taken seriously. Respect is different. It comes from demonstrating competence, setting boundaries, and maintaining self-respect. A respected person does not need to please everyone because their value is not dependent on external approval. They speak with confidence, make decisions with conviction, and do not allow themselves to be manipulated. They understand that it is better to be true to themselves and be respected by a few than to be liked by many but valued by none. People who chase approval often find themselves feeling empty and unfulfilled. They may have many acquaintances but few meaningful relationships. This is because likability often relies on surface-level interactions. It is easy to like someone who is always agreeable, but it is hard to truly respect them. On the other hand, those who prioritize respect may not be universally liked, but they attract deeper and more authentic connections. Their relationships are built on mutual admiration rather than convenience. In professional settings, respect is far more important than being liked. Leaders who try too hard to be liked often struggle to make tough decisions. They avoid difficult conversations, hesitate to enforce rules, and allow inefficiency to continue because they fear upsetting others. However, a leader who is respected earns trust by being fair, firm, and principled. Employees may not always agree with their decisions, but they follow them because they recognize their strength and reliability. A respected leader does not need to be liked to be effective. They need to be trusted and admired for their competence and integrity. Respect also leads to long-term success. Those who prioritize respect build a reputation for being dependable and strong-willed. They do not bend under pressure, nor do they compromise their standards for temporary approval. Because of this, they are taken seriously and given more opportunities. Meanwhile, those who only seek to be liked may find themselves easily replaced, as likability alone does not create lasting value. Another key difference between respect and likability is that respect lasts, while being liked can be temporary. People's opinions change easily, and what makes someone likable today may not work tomorrow. If a person builds their identity around being liked, they are at the mercy of others' shifting preferences. However, respect endures because it is based on something deeper: character, consistency, and strength. A person who is respected will be valued even when they are not liked, but a person who is merely liked can be discarded when they are no longer useful. Ultimately, those who seek respect over likability gain something far more meaningful. They establish themselves as individuals who are not easily swayed, who do not sacrifice their beliefs for approval, and who command genuine admiration. While being liked may bring temporary comfort, it is respect that brings lasting influence and fulfillment. In the end, being liked is temporary, but respect endures. Those who live for approval will always be chasing the ever-changing opinions of others, while those who seek respect build something far more lasting: trust, credibility, and influence. True fulfillment comes not from pleasing everyone, but from standing firm in one's values and earning the admiration of those who recognize strength and integrity. When faced with the choice between being liked and being respected, choose respect, because in the long run, it is the only thing that truly matters.